What is in the air in New Hampshire? And things got nasty. Take on both for me, please.
Well, hi, Nicolle.
Hi.
I think, this is the first, this weekend, I got to say, this weekend was the first time that this race felt like fully engaged because of the fact that the senators who had spent so much time in Washington during impeachment and so lent a weird kind of airy, kind of uncompressed quality to Iowa. They were all here this weekend. The whole field was here and competing in the way that people normally do in the tight 8-day window between the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. So there was a lot of action on the ground this weekend. Everyone was out and about and doing a lot of events every day. You had because of that, you kind of take the temperature of what's going on. So you mentioned that Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg seem like they had momentum. That's reflected in the numbers. Sanders was ahead in New Hampshire before Iowa. He still seems to be ahead in New Hampshire after Iowa, has gained a little bit since Iowa, is turning out big crowds around the state as was expected. Pete Buttigieg is the one who seems to have gotten the bump out of Iowa and came here having claimed the narrow victory in terms of delegates. You could see that in his crowds yesterday in Nashua. He had 1,800 people at an event, which was a very large event. And you've seen big crowds, lusty, energetic crowds for him all weekend long. And then there's the third candidate who also seems to have momentum, positive momentum, and that's Amy Klobuchar, who really got hot over the weekend coming out of that debate where she performed well by most measures and where she took on Mayor Pete and some others. She bounced out of that debate, raised $3 million over the course of 2 days over the weekend. And last night, also in Nashua at an event where I was present, packed a room with 1,100 people. That's the biggest crowd she has seen in the entire cycle. And you're seeing her in those tracking polls move up from 5th to 4th, maybe into 3rd. She could end up being the person who kind of comes around and has the big surprise tomorrow night if these tracking polls turn out to be true. We can talk about negative if you want, but that's where the momentum is right now, with Joe Biden having the momentum kind of on the way down, and a campaign that feels like it's reeling and staggering around all weekend long, and then Elizabeth Warren, who seems just flat as could be. Flat, not really going up, not going down, but not in a great place.
John, let me just follow up on one sort of historical question. The analysis of the 2016 GOP primary was that it was being fought in brackets. Is that what Klobuchar's momentum can be chalked up to? That in that bracket of sort of a non-Bernie Warren sort of menu option, it's becoming a knife fight between Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar as opposed to Buttigieg and Biden or Buttigieg and someone else?
Well, Joe Biden turned on some of these key people over the weekend. On Saturday, he hit Pete Buttigieg pretty hard, both with a digital ad that they put up, kind of mocking him as a small-town mayor, the Biden campaign did. You have also seen you've seen fighting in between all three of those in the kind of center-left, what if you want to call it, moderate lane. And you can somewhat say that a lot of Klobuchar's upward momentum seems to have come directly out of Joe Biden. As Biden has fallen, Klobuchar and to some extent Pete have risen. And I think there is genuine competition in those lanes. People are looking at who is trying to consolidate the vote in each of those sectors. And it's why Sanders, having not quite won in Iowa, but come close, and now having this lead here, he was the expected front runner. He won it by 22 points 4 years ago. The fact that he seems to be consolidating that progressive slot is what's causing so much despair in Elizabeth Warren's world, because the reality is it really is a battle for the hearts and minds of the left between those two. And Bernie so far seems to be winning that battle both in Iowa and here, hands down.
Von Hilliard, you're on the ground. You know that Buttigieg campaign better than just about anybody I know. Did he get all of the bounce and all of the momentum that he deserved for coming out on top in terms of delegates in Iowa?
He was able to leave Iowa, Nicolle, with that message that he was able to go over, win in Iowa, not only with the suburbs, but also those rural parts of the state. That's where earlier today he was over in Plymouth, one of those rural communities here in central New Hampshire. But you guys were speaking to this here. Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders are effectively trying to make this a one-on-one race here. Both of them, they're only mentioning each other. They're trying to create this narrative in voters' minds that it's down to the two of them. But it's Amy Klobuchar that is continually becoming that wild card factor here in the state. And the reason I say that, we can only make so much of anecdotes, but 42% of the electorate here are registered independents in this state. And a good chunk of those took part, as you mentioned, in that 2016 GOP primary. There's one individual, I was just down the road, this fellow named Ed Milkey. He walked over and he goes, I'm one of those independents. And he goes, I was considering voting for Bernie Sanders, but he goes, I'm going to go after seeing her at that Nashville event that John was at for Amy Klobuchar. But then there's also, I want to mention to you, Liam Davidson. I met Liam back in the fall at an Elizabeth Warren event. He's a senior over at Dartmouth. And I just was text messaging with him. And I asked him, where do you stand now? I'm just going to read you this, all right? He goes, quote, my heart is with Elizabeth Warren, but her national polling has me worried. I like Pete, but worry that he's unproven. My number one issue is electability. You know who Liam, the senior over at Davidson or over up in Dartmouth, is going for? Amy Klobuchar. Why? Amy's strong record of winning in Minnesota, combined with a progressive enough policy platform, makes her the best compromise candidate I'm able to find. Back in the fall, Amy Klobuchar was no mention from Liam. Today, he said he's going to go over to his polling location over in Hanover, New Hampshire, and vote for Amy Klobuchar. So to what extent is this really a two-man race between Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders? I have no idea, Nicolle.
Margay, it sounds like Liam might have read the New York Times editorial where the New York Times seemed to subscribe to my, at least theory of the case, that the Democrats are evaluating candidates in two brackets. Klobuchar was the one that you guys put on top in that bracket.
I was just going to say it sounds like that voter has been spending time with the New York Times editorial board. But they sound just like we do. I mean, listen, I still think that it is actually extremely early, and I don't really think that the race is going to coalesce until the Super Tuesday states weigh in, and specifically a state like South Carolina, which is actually far more representative of the Democratic Party as a whole. That's when we're going to start seeing urban voters voting, black voters, not just urban separately, and I think just a wider swath of suburban voters as well. And so I think we're waiting for that. But I think the fear that's driving Democratic voters is extremely real, the anxiety. And I continue to believe that this is a race that's actually going to be won in terms of the general with GOTV, get out the vote effort, and with just door knocking, just old-fashioned campaigning on the ground.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.